I got fired at exactly 8:15 a.m. on a Wednesday morning for refusing to put someone else's name on 3 years of my life's work. They thought they were cutting me loose with nothing but a cardboard box and wounded pride. What they didn't realize was that the revolutionary algorithm powering their entire $2 billion valuation was still legally mine, and I had built the perfect kill switch into every line of code. My name is Maya Blackwood, and I'm a data scientist, or rather, I was the lead data scientist at quantum analytics before this morning's spectacular career explosion. At 8:15 a.m., my decade-long journey with predictive modeling and machine learning came to an abrupt halt when I refused to share authorship of my breakthrough algorithm with someone who couldn't code her way out of a paper bag. The morning started like any other Wednesday. I arrived at Quantum Sleek downtown headquarters at 7:30 a.m., my usual half-hour early to review overnight processing results from ARIA, the adaptive risk intelligence algorithm that I'd spent the last 3 years perfecting. ARIA wasn't just another predictive model. It was a revolutionary system that could forecast market trends, consumer behavior, and risk patterns with 97.3% accuracy. No other algorithm in the financial tech space even came close. I should have known something was wrong when I found CEO Marcus Henley waiting in the conference room instead of my usual morning coffee ritual in the data lab. The mahogany table gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights, and 2 steaming cups sat untouched, his usual black coffee, and what should have been my vanilla latte. But Marcus wasn't drinking. He was pacing behind his chair like a caged predator, his expensive Italian suit wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. Maya, he began without preamble, not bothering with his usual pleasantries about weather or weekend plans. We need to discuss the ARIA publication. My stomach lurched. The publication. 3 years of research, innovation, and countless 18-hour days distilled into a groundbreaking paper that would cement quantum analytics as the leader in predictive modeling. The paper that would establish ARIA as the gold standard in financial forecasting. The paper with my name as lead author. What about it? I asked, settling into my chair and trying to read his expression. Marcus had always been difficult to decipher, a poker face perfected through decades of high-stakes negotiations. But today, something was different. His jaw was tense, and he avoided making direct eye contact. The board has made a decision, he continued, still pacing. We're adding Victoria as co-author. Equal billing. Joint credit for the algorithm development. Victoria Henley, his daughter. 26 years old, fresh out of a master's in communications from Northwestern, with exactly zero background in data science, machine learning, or anything remotely related to algorithm development. She'd been hired 6 months ago as Director of Innovation Strategy, a title that meant nothing and apparently encompassed everything. Marcus, I said carefully, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. Victoria didn't contribute to ARIA's development. She's never even seen the code. She doesn't understand the mathematical models, the training datasets, or the validation protocols. She's been instrumental in the strategic positioning, he replied, finally stopping his pacing to face me. Her insights into market applications have been invaluable. I almost laughed. Victoria's insights consisted of suggesting we market ARIA as AI that makes money magic happen and proposing we add cryptocurrency predictions because Bitcoin is, super hot right now. Strategic positioning doesn't constitute algorithm development, I said firmly. This isn't a marketing campaign. This is 3 years of original research. The mathematical foundations alone took 18 months to perfect. Marcus's expression hardened, and I saw the shift from colleague to corporate autocrat. This isn't negotiable, Maya. The board wants Victoria's name on the paper. It's about positioning her for future leadership roles. Future leadership roles? The words escaped before I could stop them, sharp with disbelief. In data science? Marcus, she asked me last week if Python was a type of snake.
She's learning, he snapped.
Everyone starts somewhere. Everyone starts by learning the fundamentals, not by claiming credit for work they didn't do. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. This is my research. My algorithm. My 3 years of life poured into every optimization and validation test. I won't put her name on something she had nothing to do with. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken threats. Through the conference room's glass walls, I could see the morning rush of employees arriving, data analysts clutching coffee cups, engineers reviewing code on their phones, the steady rhythm of a company built on innovation and hard work. None of them knew that their CEO was about to destroy the credibility of their most valuable asset for the sake of family nepotism. "Maya," Marcus said finally, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "I'm not asking you. I'm telling you. Victoria's name goes on the paper, or the paper doesn't get published at all." "Then it doesn't get published," I replied without hesitation. His face flushed red, the same color I'd seen during quarterly presentations when the numbers didn't align with his optimistic projections. "Are you refusing a direct order?" "I'm protecting the integrity of my work. If you want to publish research with Victoria's name on it, she can conduct her own experiments, develop her own algorithms, and earn her own credentials." Marcus reached for his phone, pressing a button with deliberate force. "Security to conference room A, immediately." The words hit me like ice water. In all my years at quantum analytics, through project failures and deadline pressures and heated technical debates, it had never come to this. Security. As if I were a threat to be neutralized rather than the architect of their most valuable technology. "Marcus, let's discuss this rationally. The time for discussion is over." His voice carried the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence. "Maya Blackwood, your refusal to collaborate and your unprofessional attitude toward company directives have made your position untenable. You're terminated. Effective immediately." The conference room door opened, and 2 security guards entered, both familiar faces from the lobby. Tom had always greeted me with a smile and updates about his daughter's soccer games. Rebecca usually asked about my weekend hiking plans. Today, they couldn't meet my eyes. "I'll need your badge, laptop, and any company devices," Tom said quietly, his usual friendly demeanor replaced by professional distance. I unclipped my security badge, the one that had granted me access to every floor, every lab, every server room in the building. The one that represented 10 years of trust and collaboration. It felt heavier than it should as I placed it on the conference room table. "My laptop is in my office," I said, standing slowly, "along with my personal belongings. We'll escort you," Rebecca added, her voice gentle but firm. As we walked through the halls of quantum analytics, I felt like I was attending my own funeral. Colleagues looked up from their desks with expressions ranging from shock to confusion to carefully neutral professionalism. In the data science department, my team of 6 brilliant engineers watched in stunned silence as I passed their workstations. Jennifer, my lead programmer, started to stand. "Maya, what's—" "It's okay," I said, managing a small smile. "Keep working on the validation protocols. The code reviews are due Friday." She nodded, but I could see the questions burning in her eyes. Behind her, Marcus was probably already spinning the narrative. Irreconcilable differences, failure to align with company vision, whatever corporate euphemism would make my termination seem reasonable. My office felt smaller than usual as I packed my personal items under Rebecca's watchful eye. The world's best data scientist mug from last year's team appreciation event. Photos from conference presentations where I'd explained ARIA's capabilities to rooms full of impressed experts. A small cactus that had survived 3 years of irregular watering and endless late nights. In my desk drawer, beneath a stack of printed research papers and conference badges, my fingers found what I was looking for. A small black USB drive, identical to dozens of others scattered throughout the tech industry. To anyone watching, it appeared to be standard backup storage, the kind every responsible engineer maintains for personal projects and important files. But this USB drive contained something far more valuable than backup files. It held the crown jewels of my 3-year odyssey, the original mathematical proofs that formed ARIA's foundation, the proprietary training methodologies I developed, and most importantly, the legal documentation that proved beyond any doubt who had actually created the algorithm everyone assumed belonged to quantum analytics. I palmed the drive smoothly, slipping it into my jacket pocket alongside my car keys while making a show of organizing papers for the trash bin. "That's company property," a sharp voice announced from my doorway. Victoria Henley stood there in a designer dress that probably cost more than most of my team's monthly salaries, her smartphone held up and recording. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves, her makeup applied with professional precision, and her expression carried the kind of entitled confidence that only comes from never having earned anything through merit. "I'm documenting this for Daddy," she said, zooming her phone camera on my hands. "We can't have employees stealing proprietary information." I turned to face her fully, keeping my expression neutral despite the rage building in my chest. "Hello, Victoria. Congratulations on your upcoming co-authorship." She lowered her phone slightly, surprised by my calm tone. "Yeah, well, Daddy says my strategic insights were crucial to the algorithm's development. He says I deserve equal recognition for my contributions." Behind her, Tom shifted uncomfortably. Even Rebecca looked embarrassed by the recording. "I'm sure your contributions will be thoroughly documented in the publication," I said, returning to my packing. "Good luck explaining the mathematical foundations to the peer review committee." "What mathematical foundations?" Victoria asked, then caught herself. "I mean, obviously I understand all the technical stuff. I just don't need to prove it to you." I placed the last of my belongings, a stress ball shaped like a DNA helix, into my cardboard box and took one final look around the office where I'd built something revolutionary. Where I'd spent countless nights debugging code, optimizing algorithms, and pushing the boundaries of what predictive modeling could achieve. "The office is all yours," I said to Victoria, gesturing to the empty desk. "I hope you enjoy explaining the difference between supervised and unsupervised learning to Fortune 500 clients." Her frown deepened. "What's the difference?" "Nothing you need to worry about," I replied, walking past her toward the door. Tom and Rebecca escorted me to the elevator in uncomfortable silence. As we descended through the floors of quantum analytics, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The PhD in applied mathematics from MIT. The postdoc research at Stanford's AI lab. The early morning phone call from Marcus 5 years ago, offering me the chance to build something unprecedented at his growing financial tech company. I'd believed in his vision then. Quantum analytics was going to democratize financial forecasting, making sophisticated predictive tools available to small businesses and individual investors. We were going to level the playing field, disrupting an industry dominated by massive investment banks and their proprietary algorithms. ARIA was supposed to be the key to that revolution. My algorithm could analyze market patterns, consumer behaviors, and economic indicators with unprecedented accuracy. It could predict stock price movements, identify emerging trends, and assess risk profiles faster and more reliably than any existing system. But somewhere along the way, Marcus had lost sight of the mission. Quantum analytics had become just another tech company chasing valuations and market share. Innovation took a back seat to networking and strategic partnerships. Merit was sacrificed for family connections. The elevator reached the ground floor with a soft ding. The lobby stretched before me, polished marble floors, abstract art installations, and the massive quantum analytics logo that I'd helped make valuable through 3 years of relentless work. "Maya," Tom said quietly as we reached the revolving doors. "For what it's worth, this is bullshit. Everyone knows you built ARIA." "Thanks, Tom. Take care of yourself." I stepped through the revolving doors into the crisp morning air at exactly 8:47 a.m., 32 minutes after my termination, precisely within the company's standard escort timeframe. Around me, the city hummed with its usual energy, professionals rushing to meetings, coffee vendors serving the caffeinated masses, the endless pulse of ambition and commerce. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, my box of belongings weighing almost nothing compared to the USB drive in my pocket. Inside that tiny device lay the ammunition for the war Marcus had just declared, documentation that would reshape everything he thought he knew about ownership and intellectual property. Because Marcus Henley had made the same mistake that countless executives make when dealing with technical talent. He assumed that being CEO meant owning everything created within his company's walls. He'd never bothered to investigate the legal structures underlying ARIA's development, Never questioned why a brilliant data scientist would spend 3 years building revolutionary technology without protecting her own interests. 3 years ago, when I'd first joined quantum analytics, I'd learned from my previous employer's mistakes. Blackwood Data Solutions LLC had been incorporated 6 months before I'd even interviewed with Marcus, with my sister Elena listed as the primary stakeholder. Every breakthrough, every innovation, every mathematical proof that made ARIA possible had been carefully documented and filed under my personal company's intellectual property protection. Quantum Analytics had licensing rights to use ARIA, of course, as long as I remain employed and as long as proper attribution was maintained. But the core algorithm, the training methodologies, the mathematical foundations that made everything else possible, those belonged to me. As I walked toward the parking garage, I could see Victoria through the building's glass front, settling into my former office with her phone out, probably live streaming her first day as a tech executive to her social media followers. She had no idea that in approximately 43 minutes, when Marcus tried to demonstrate ARIA to the Meridian Investment Group, everything would change. My car's interior felt like a command center as I slid into the driver's seat. The cardboard box of personal items went into the passenger seat, and I pulled out my laptop. The parking garage's fluorescent lights flickered overhead as I powered it on, my fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced precision. The ARIA administrative interface appeared on my screen, clean, elegant, exactly as I designed it. Most people thought ARIA was just sophisticated financial modeling software. They saw the predictive outputs, the risk assessments, the market forecasts that had made quantum analytics millions in consulting fees. What they didn't see was the architecture beneath. 17 layers of interconnected security protocols, each more sophisticated than the last. I entered my credentials, not my quantum analytics credentials. Those had been terminated along with my employment. These were different, older, more fundamental to the system's operation. Welcome, primary architect. System status, operational. Security layers 1 to 16, active. Layer 17, standby mode. Layer 17, my insurance policy, built into ARIA's foundation from the very beginning. While Marcus and his board celebrated each new client contract and revenue milestone, I'd been constructing something else entirely, a dead man's switch, elegant in its mathematical simplicity. The logic was clean and irrefutable. If the registered system architect's employment status changed from active to terminated without proper intellectual property transfer protocols, ownership verification would be required within 60 minutes. Without that verification, ARIA would enter protective mode, refusing all access attempts until the ownership dispute was resolved through proper legal channels. I glanced at my phone. 8:52 a.m. Marcus's demonstration to Meridian Investment Group was scheduled for 9:30. 38 minutes until showtime. My fingers hovered over the activation command. Once I pressed enter, there would be no going back. Quantum Analytics would lose access to their most valuable asset, their $2 billion valuation would evaporate, and Marcus would finally understand the difference between employing talent and owning innovation. But then I thought about Victoria's smirk, about Marcus's calculated dismissal, about 3 years of my life being reduced to a footnote in someone else's career advancement. I pressed enter. Employment status change detected. Initiating ownership verification protocol. Countdown initiated. 59:59. The numbers began their inexorable descent. I closed my laptop and started the car, pulling out of the garage into the morning traffic. As I drove through downtown, I sipped the coffee I grabbed from a street vendor, better than the untouched latte Marcus had left cooling on his conference room table. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer, my former lead programmer. Heard what happened. This is insane. The whole team is ready to walk out. I pulled over to respond safely. Don't.
Not yet.
Watch what happens at 9:30. 3 disappeared then. Maya, what did you do? Nothing illegal. Just enforcing intellectual property rights. Holy shit. You built a kill switch into ARIA. I built protection into my work. There's a difference. My phone continued buzzing with messages, from team members expressing outrage and solidarity, From industry contacts who'd already heard news of my termination, from former colleagues offering job opportunities. But I ignored them all except one incoming call from my sister. "Maya, what's wrong? Why are you calling so early?" Elena's voice carried immediate concern. As a patent attorney specializing in technology law, she developed an instinct for crisis calls. "I got fired," I said simply, "for refusing to put Victoria Henley's name on my research paper." There was a pause, followed by the sound of papers rustling. "The ARIA algorithm? The one worth. Oh my God, Maya. They have no idea what they just did, do they?" "Not yet. But they will in about 35 minutes. "Good," she said fiercely. "I never liked Marcus anyway. Too much hairspray and fake sincerity. No one who uses that much product can be trusted with intellectual property." Despite everything, I laughed. "I'll call you later with details. Just be ready for some interesting phone calls today." "I've been ready for 3 years. Give them hell, sister." I ended the call and checked the time. 9:03 a.m. 27 minutes until Marcus's world imploded. The Meridian Investment Group building loomed ahead, 30 floors of glass and steel reaching toward the clouded sky. I had no intention of going inside, but I wanted to be nearby when the demonstration began. There was something poetic about watching the consequences of Marcus's decision from the very place where he'd planned to showcase his company's revolutionary technology. I parked across the street and opened my laptop again. The countdown continued its relentless march, 23:17. Through my windshield, I could see the quantum analytics team arriving for their presentation. Marcus stepped out of a black town car, his confidence radiating despite the morning's events. Behind him, Victoria emerged in yet another designer outfit, her phone already out and recording her big presentation day. They had no idea what was waiting for them on the 28th floor.
My phone rang.
Elena calling back. "Maya, I just want to confirm something. The Blackwood Data Solutions filing from 3 years ago, all the core mathematical proofs are documented under that entity, correct? Every equation, every optimization protocol, every training methodology. ARIA's foundation is completely protected, and quantum analytics has only licensing rights, contingent on your employment and proper attribution?" Exactly. Marcus never bothered to read the fine print when I insisted on retaining intellectual property rights. He was so excited about recruiting me from Stanford that he agreed to anything. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. When this hits the courts, it's going to be a landmark case for data scientist rights. I smiled, watching as more quantum analytics employees filed into the Meridian building. It won't reach court. Marcus is too smart to fight a battle he can't win. He'll settle and restructure. Don't be so sure. His ego might override his business sense. Then he'll learn an expensive lesson about the difference between managing talent and owning innovation. The countdown reached 15:42. 15 minutes until Marcus discovered that firing me was the worst business decision of his career. As I sat in my car watching the Meridian building, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The late nights debugging ARIA's neural networks. The breakthrough moments when complex mathematical relationships suddenly clicked into place. The satisfaction of watching accuracy rates climb from 73% to 89% to the final 97.3% that made ARIA revolutionary. Every line of code, every optimization, every innovation had come from my mind and my dedication. Marcus might have provided the office space and the paycheck, but the intellectual achievement was mine. The mathematical proofs were mine. The algorithmic breakthroughs were mine. And soon, everyone would know it. At 9:28 a.m., my laptop chimed with an alert. Someone was attempting to access ARIA's core systems remotely, probably Marcus trying to run preliminary checks before the demonstration. The access attempt was denied, of course. Layer 17 was now active, and only I possessed the credentials needed to override the ownership verification protocol. I imagined the confusion in the Meridian Building's conference room. The IT support team frantically trying to diagnose what they assumed was a routine connectivity issue. Marcus checking his watch and assuring the Meridian executives that everything would be resolved momentarily. At 9:30 a.m. exactly, the countdown reached 0. Every screen connected to ARIA would now display the same message: ownership verification required. System locked pending intellectual property dispute resolution. Contact Blackwood Data Solutions LLC for licensing terms. I closed my laptop and started my car. The show was just beginning, but I had more important places to be. Downtown, at the offices of Goldman, Richter and Associates, where certain documents had been waiting in escrow for exactly this moment. As I drove away from the Meridian building, my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, email alerts, all from quantum analytics personnel who were finally beginning to understand the scope of their problem. But I ignored them all. Marcus had made his choice at 8:15 a.m. when he prioritized family nepotism over intellectual integrity. Now he would live with the consequences of that choice. The real work was just beginning. The 28th floor conference room at Meridian Investment Group had been transformed into a technological showcase. 3 massive displays showed ARIA's interface mockups, while quantum analytics' best engineers stood ready at support stations. The Meridian team, 5 executives in suits that cost more than most cars, sat around the polished mahogany table with tablets ready to capture every detail of the demonstration that would justify their potential $2 billion investment. Marcus Henley commanded the head of the table with his usual confidence, though I knew from Jennifer's frantic texts that sweat was already beading on his forehead. Beside him, Victoria posed with her tablet, live streaming to her followers about revolutionizing financial technology and taking data science to the next level. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of 1,000 pitch meetings. "What you're about to witness isn't just software. It's the future of financial forecasting. ARIA represents 3 years of innovation from our world-class development team, and under the strategic guidance of our Director of Innovation Strategy," he gestured toward Victoria, who waved at her phone camera, "we're positioned to scale beyond anything our competitors can imagine." Richard Meridian, the lead investor, leaned forward with interest. "Let's see it in action, Marcus. The numbers you've shared are impressive, but we need to see real-time performance." Marcus nodded confidently to his lead demonstration engineer, a nervous-looking man named Kevin who'd been promoted to senior systems architect approximately 2 hours after my termination. Kevin's fingers moved across the keyboard, initiating what should have been ARIA's standard startup sequence. The displays flickered to life, showing ARIA's elegant initialization interface. Everything looked perfect for exactly 8 seconds. Then the first error message appeared: "System architect verification required." Kevin frowned, typing more rapidly. "Just a minor authentication hiccup. Let me refresh the connection. Access denied. Primary architect credentials not found." Marcus's smile remained fixed, but I could see the tension creeping into his jaw. "Kevin, what's the status?" "I'm not sure, sir. The system is requesting architect-level credentials that I don't have access to." "Then use the administrative override." Kevin's fingers flew across the keyboard. "I am, sir. It's not accepting any of our standard protocols." The displays flashed red. A new message appeared, larger and more prominent: "Ownership verification required. Time remaining: 57:23. Contact Blackwood Data Solutions LLC for immediate resolution." The conference room fell silent except for the soft clicking of Kevin's increasingly desperate typing. The Meridian executives exchanged meaningful glances, the kind that signaled the rapid evaporation of confidence and investment interest. Victoria, oblivious to the growing crisis, continued her live stream commentary. "So, sometimes technology has these little glitches, but that's totally normal in the AI space. Our amazing team always figures these things out super quickly." "Victoria, turn that off.
Now."
Marcus's voice carried barely controlled panic. She blinked at him in confusion, but kept recording. "But Daddy, I'm building my brand as a tech thought leader."
"Turn it off."
Richard Meridian cleared his throat diplomatically. "Marcus, is there a technical issue we should be aware of?" No issue at all," Marcus replied, his corporate smile stretched thin. "Just a routine security protocol. Kevin, status report." Kevin's face had gone pale as he stared at his screen. Sir, I can't access any of the core systems. It's like they're locked from the inside. There's something here about intellectual property verification and legal ownership documentation. That's impossible. We own ARIA. It's our proprietary technology. Sir, Kevin said quietly, his voice cracking, there's a reference here to something called Layer 17. I've never seen this before. And there's contact information for a company called Blackwood Data Solutions. The countdown continued its merciless progression. 54:16. Marcus pulled out his phone with trembling fingers. Get Maya Blackwood on the line. Immediately. His assistant's voice came through the speaker. Sir, Ms. Blackwood was terminated this morning. Her company phone has been deactivated. I don't care. Find her personal number. Find her address. Get her here now. The Meridian executives were no longer trying to hide their concern. Richard Meridian began gathering his materials with deliberate slowness, the corporate equivalent of backing away from a rabid animal. Marcus, he said carefully, it appears you have significant internal issues to resolve. We'll need to postpone this demonstration indefinitely. Wait, please. This is just a temporary technical glitch. Maya Blackwood was a disgruntled employee who apparently controls access to your core technology? Richard's eyebrow arched skeptically. The technology that represents the majority of your company's valuation? Victoria's live stream was capturing everything, her followers' comments streaming in real time. This is so awkward, lol. Is this supposed to happen? Maybe the daddy's company isn't as good as she thinks. Uncle Marcus, Victoria whined, finally lowering her phone. Can't we just call Maya and ask her to fix it? I mean, how hard can it be? The room erupted. Marcus spun on her with fury blazing in his eyes. Get out. Everyone out except essential personnel. Victoria fled, her heels clicking rapidly across the marble floor, but the damage was already done. Her live stream had broadcast quantum analytics humiliation to thousands of viewers. The hashtag #QuantumFail was already trending on 3 social media platforms. Kevin made one last desperate attempt to breach the system lockdown. Sir, I'm seeing multiple failed access attempts logged in the system. Someone's been trying to hack in from external sources.
What? Who?
I don't know, but the IP addresses are showing locations in Romania, Belarus, and Malaysia. Sir, did you authorize any external technical support? Marcus's face flushed red. In his desperation, he'd already reached out to several gray market technical firms offering substantial payments for emergency system recovery. But admitting that to the Meridian executives would be corporate suicide. Just keep trying, he muttered. The countdown reached 45:30. Richard Meridian stood with finality. Marcus, I've seen enough. When a company's core technology can be held hostage by a single terminated employee, it indicates fundamental problems with intellectual property management and technical architecture. We're withdrawing our investment offer. Richard, please let me explain. There's nothing to explain. Your former employee apparently owns the technology you were trying to sell us. Even if you resolve this particular crisis, what's to stop it from happening again? What other surprises are buried in your systems? The Meridian team filed out in uncomfortable silence, leaving Marcus alone with his remaining engineers and the countdown timer that continued its relentless march toward zero. At 9:47 a.m., the displays went completely dark. Then a single message appeared across all screens. ARIA system entering protective mode. All access permanently revoked pending intellectual property dispute resolution. For licensing inquiries, contact Blackwood Data Solutions, LLC. Authorized representative, Elena Blackwood, attorney at law. In the span of 17 minutes, Marcus Henley had lost everything. The Meridian deal was dead. Quantum Analytics stock price was plummeting in real time as news of the failed demonstration spread through financial networks. And ARIA, the revolutionary algorithm that justified their entire $2 billion valuation, was locked behind walls of my creation. The best part was still to come. Every attempt to breach Layer 17 was being logged and traced. Marcus's hasty hiring of international hackers had created a digital trail that would soon attract the attention of federal authorities. Securities fraud, computer fraud, conspiracy. Marcus had managed to violate half a dozen federal statutes in a single morning. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. 27 missed calls from Quantum Analytics Legal. Should I return them? I typed back. Not yet. Let them panic until noon. Then we discussed terms. While Marcus Henley was discovering the true meaning of intellectual property law, I was sitting in Elena's corner office reviewing the legal documentation that would reshape his understanding of ownership and employment contracts. Elena's law firm occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. From her conference room, I could actually see the Quantum Analytics building 8 blocks away, a glass and steel monument to the hubris that had just destroyed Marcus's carefully constructed empire. Maya, Elena said, spreading the Blackwood Data Solutions Incorporation documents across her mahogany table. I have to admit, when you asked me to set up this LLC 3 years ago, I thought you were being paranoid. You called it premature legal preparation for hypothetical scenarios, I reminded her, reviewing the patent filings that established my ownership of ARIA's core mathematical foundations. I stand corrected. Your hypothetical scenarios just cost Marcus Henley $2 billion. She pulled up real-time stock quotes on her tablet. Quantum Analytics is down 43% since the Meridian demonstration ended. Their market cap has dropped by $1.7 billion in the last 2 hours. I felt a cold satisfaction spreading through my chest, but no guilt. Marcus had made his choice when he prioritized family nepotism over intellectual integrity. The consequences were entirely of his own making. Any word from their legal team? I asked. 17 calls in the last hour. Harold Fitzgerald sounds increasingly desperate. He's threatening everything from breach of contract to corporate espionage to violation of non-disclosure agreements, all of which would require him to prove that Quantum Analytics actually owns ARIA's intellectual property. Exactly. And our documentation makes it very clear that they don't. Elena smiled with the satisfaction of a chess player who'd been planning checkmate for 3 years. The incorporation papers, the patent filings, the intellectual property assignments, everything is airtight. Quantum Analytics has licensing rights only, contingent on your continued employment and proper attribution of your work. My laptop chimed with an alert. Someone was making increasingly sophisticated attempts to breach ARIA's security layers, but these weren't the amateur hour attacks Marcus had commissioned earlier. These attempts showed real skill, real understanding of system architecture. Interesting, I murmured, watching the attack patterns scroll across my screen. Someone's hired professionals. Elena looked over my shoulder. Can they break through?
No.
Layer 17 isn't a security protocol you can hack. It's a logical gate built into ARIA's fundamental architecture. Without proper ownership verification, ARIA literally doesn't recognize itself as existing. You can't break into a system that refuses to acknowledge its own existence. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
My phone rang.
The caller ID showed Jennifer's number. Maya, you need to know what's happening here. Jennifer's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. Marcus just fired Kevin and 3 other engineers for failing to maintain system integrity. He's blaming the entire tech team for the ARIA lockout. Where are you calling from? The parking garage. The whole building is in chaos. There are lawyers everywhere. The board is in emergency session, and I heard 2 executives arguing about whether to declare bankruptcy. What about the team? Our team? We're all ready to walk. Every single person who worked on ARIA development wants to leave. We know you built the system, Maya. We know none of us could recreate what you've done. I felt a surge of loyalty toward the engineers who'd supported my vision, who'd worked 18-hour days debugging code and optimizing algorithms, who'd believed in ARIA's potential even when management didn't understand its complexity. Don't walk yet, I said. In about 4 hours, I'm going to make an offer that changes everything. Can you hold on until then? Of course. But Maya, what's really happening? How did you lock down the entire system? I protected my intellectual property using completely legal means. When Marcus terminated my employment without proper IP transfer protocols, ARIA's ownership verification system activated automatically. Jesus. You built a dead man's switch into our most valuable asset. I built protection into my life's work. There's a difference. After ending the call, I turned back to Elena. I want to make them an offer. What kind of offer? The kind that lets them keep their company while acknowledging reality. Marcus can maintain quantum analytics, but ARIA becomes an independent entity. Blackwood Data Solutions licenses the algorithm to them at market rates, with proper attribution and shared revenue. Elena considered this carefully. You'd be willing to work with them again? After this morning? Not with Marcus, but with a new management structure that understands the difference between employing talent and owning innovation. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city where my former colleagues were probably watching their stock options evaporate in real time. The engineers who helped build ARIA deserve better than unemployment because their CEO made a catastrophic mistake. And ARIA deserves to fulfill its potential rather than becoming a casualty of corporate politics. That's surprisingly generous, considering what they put you through. It's not generous. It's strategic. ARIA is worth more as a functioning system than as a locked asset. But this time, everyone involved will understand exactly who created what. My laptop chimed again. The attack attempts had intensified, but now I was seeing something interesting in the logs. Multiple simultaneous breach attempts from the same geographic region, all using similar methodologies. Marcus hadn't just hired one hacking group, he'd hired several, probably offering bonuses for whoever could crack my security first. Elena, how quickly can you file a federal complaint for computer fraud and conspiracy? She was already reaching for her phone. Give me 30 minutes. What am I looking at? I turned my laptop toward her, showing the attack logs. International hacking attempts commissioned by an American CEO to breach intellectual property protections. The FBI's cybercrime division loves cases like this. Oh, Marcus, Elena said with mock sympathy, you've really outdone yourself this time. As she made her calls, I drafted an email to the Quantum Analytics Board of Directors. Not to Marcus. He'd forfeited his right to direct communication when he chose termination over negotiation. This would go straight to the people who would ultimately decide the company's future. To the Board of Directors of Quantum Analytics. My name is Dr. Maya Blackwood, and until 8:15 a.m. this morning, I was your chief data scientist and the principal architect of the ARIA algorithm system. As you've undoubtedly discovered by now, ARIA is currently inaccessible due to intellectual property protection protocols that activated upon my termination. This was not sabotage or retaliation. It was a legal safeguard designed to protect proprietary technology that was never owned by Quantum Analytics. The core mathematical foundations, training methodologies, and algorithmic innovations that make ARIA revolutionary are the intellectual property of Blackwood Data Solutions LLC, filed with the Patent Office 3 years ago. Quantum Analytics possessed licensing rights to this technology, contingent upon my continued employment and proper attribution of my work. Mr. Henley's decision to terminate my employment for refusing to share credit with an unqualified family member has voided those licensing agreements. However, I am prepared to discuss new arrangements that would restore ARIA's functionality while establishing appropriate recognition for the actual creators of this technology. These discussions must be conducted with a board representative who has full authority to restructure both the licensing agreements and the company's technical leadership. I am not interested in returning to work under Marcus Henley's authority, nor am I interested in negotiations that attempt to minimize my role in ARIA's development. If these conditions are unacceptable, Blackwood Data Solutions will license ARIA to other financial technology firms who better understand the value of intellectual honesty. The choice is yours. You have until 5 p.m. today to respond. Dr. Maya Blackwood, founder and principal, Blackwood Data Solutions LLC. I read the email aloud to Elena, who nodded approvingly. Perfect tone. Professional but firm. You're not demanding anything unreasonable, just acknowledgement of reality. She paused. What happens if they refuse? Then I take ARIA to Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, or any of the dozen investment banks who've been trying to poach me for the last 2 years. They'll pay triple what Quantum Analytics ever offered, and they'll give me the resources to develop ARIA's full potential. And quantum analytics becomes a cautionary tale about the importance of reading contracts before you sign them. At 1:30 p.m., I sent the email and copied Elena on the transmission. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with call attempts from quantum analytics executives, but I let them all go to voicemail. The time for phone calls had passed. If they wanted to negotiate, they could do it properly through legal representatives who understood the scope of their problem. Elena's assistant knocked on the conference room door. "Ms. Blackwood, there's a gentleman here from the FBI's cybercrime division. He says it's regarding the complaint you filed about unauthorized computer access attempts." Special Agent Michael Torres was exactly what I'd expected from federal law enforcement. Mid-40s, conservative suit, and the kind of methodical attention to detail that made white-collar criminals nervous. He reviewed my documentation with the thoroughness of someone who'd built careers on digital evidence. "Dr. Blackwood, the attack logs you've provided show clear evidence of coordinated attempts to breach protected intellectual property. The IP addresses trace to known cybercriminal organizations in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. Do you have any reason to believe these attacks were commissioned by specific individuals?" I handed him printouts of Marcus's increasingly frantic communications with various technical recovery specialists. Elena had subpoenaed his corporate communications through an emergency court order, citing immediate threats to protected intellectual property. These emails show Mr. Henley offering substantial payments for emergency system recovery to multiple organizations with known ties to cybercriminal networks, I explained. He was essentially commissioning attacks on my legally protected intellectual property. Agent Torres studied the communications with growing interest. Wire fraud, computer fraud, conspiracy to commit cybercrime. Mr. Henley has been busy this morning. We'll need to interview him formally. He's probably in his office, Elena said helpfully. Though he might be in emergency board meetings trying to explain how he lost his company's most valuable asset. As Agent Torres left to coordinate with local FBI field offices, I felt the pieces falling into place with mathematical precision. Marcus's desperation had led him to commit federal crimes that would haunt him long after the current crisis resolved. Even if he somehow rebuilt quantum analytics, the legal consequences of this morning's decisions would follow him for years. My phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. "This is Sarah Mitchell, chairwoman of the Quantum Analytics Board. We need to meet immediately. Name your terms." I showed the message to Elena, who smiled grimly. That was faster than I expected. Desperation tends to accelerate decision-making, I replied, typing back, "Goldman, Richter, and Associates. Conference room C, 3 p.m. Come prepared to discuss new organizational structure." A threads appeared then. Will Marcus be involved in these discussions? Not unless you want them to fail before they begin. Understood. I'll be there. Elena began gathering documents. Maya, are you sure about this?
You hold all the cards right now.
You could demand anything. I don't want anything unreasonable. I want credit for my work, fair compensation for my innovations, and assurance that this kind of nepotistic nonsense won't happen again. If they can accept those terms, we can rebuild something better than what Marcus destroyed. And if they can't, I looked out at the city skyline, thinking about the dozen job offers I'd received in the last year, the research opportunities waiting at top universities, the venture capital firms eager to fund any project with my name attached. Then I build something new, and quantum analytics becomes a footnote in the history of companies that confused employment with ownership. At 2:45 p.m., I gathered my documentation and headed for what would either be a negotiation or a formal declaration of war. Either way, Marcus Henley's decision to fire me at 8:15 a.m. was about to cost him everything he'd spent the last decade building. The conference room at Goldman, Richter, and Associates felt like neutral territory, elegant but not intimidating, professional but not corporate. Sarah Mitchell arrived precisely on time, accompanied by 2 other board members and a legal advisor who looked like he'd been pulled from a golf course mid-game. Sarah was younger than I'd expected for a board chair, probably mid-40s, with prematurely gray hair and the kind of focused intensity that came from managing other people's money for a living. She wasted no time on pleasantries. "Dr. Blackwood, let me be direct. Quantum analytics is facing potential bankruptcy because of decisions made this morning. Our stock price has dropped 67%. The Meridian deal is dead. And apparently, the technology that represents 80% of our valuation doesn't actually belong to us. That's an accurate assessment, I replied. Marcus claims you sabotaged our systems out of spite after being terminated for insubordination. Marcus terminated me for refusing to put his daughter's name on research she didn't contribute to. The system lockdown was an automatic response to employment contract violations designed to protect intellectual property that was never transferred to quantum analytics. Sarah's legal advisor leaned forward. Dr. Blackwood, surely you understand that work performed during company time, using company resources, belongs to the company regardless of outside patent filings. Elena answered before I could. That would be true if the intellectual property had been developed using company resources. But Dr. Blackwood's mathematical foundations for ARIA were developed prior to her employment at Quantum Analytics, using personal resources and documented under her own entity. Quantum Analytics licensed the use of this technology, but never purchased or owned it. I pulled out a thick folder of documentation. These are the original mathematical proofs, developed 6 months before I even interviewed with Marcus. The training methodologies, the optimization protocols, the algorithmic innovations, all documented and filed independently. Quantum Analytics provided implementation resources and datasets, but the core intellectual achievement was mine. Sarah studied the documents with growing understanding. So, we've been licensing technology from you personally for 3 years?
Correct.
And that licensing agreement was contingent on continued employment and proper attribution. When Marcus terminated me for refusing to share credit inappropriately, he voided the licensing terms. Jesus Christ, one of the other board members muttered. How did legal miss this? Because Marcus was so eager to recruit me from Stanford that he agreed to my IP protection requirements without fully understanding their implications, I explained. I wasn't trying to hide anything. The documentation was all filed properly. He just never bothered to read the contracts carefully. Sarah leaned back in her chair, processing the magnitude of the situation. What would it take to restore ARIA's functionality? A new licensing agreement that acknowledges reality. Blackwood Data Solutions retains ownership of the core intellectual property. Quantum Analytics pays licensing fees based on revenue generated by ARIA-powered services. I return as Chief Technology Officer with authority over all technical development and the ability to veto decisions that compromise ARIA's integrity. And Marcus. Marcus has demonstrated that he prioritizes family connections over technical competence. I won't work under his authority again. The room fell silent as the board members exchanged glances. Sarah's legal advisor was rapidly taking notes, probably calculating the legal exposure and potential costs of various scenarios. Dr. Blackwood, Sarah said finally, if we were to restructure the company to meet your requirements, removing Marcus from technical oversight, establishing new IP licensing agreements, restoring your position with expanded authority, would you be willing to resume ARIA's development? Yes, with conditions. First, my team comes with me, the engineers who actually built ARIA's implementation. They've been scapegoated for problems they didn't create. Second, all future publications and presentations acknowledge the actual contributors to our research. No more nepotistic co-authorship. Third, ARIA's ethical guidelines remain under my control. No surveillance applications, no military contracts without defensive purposes, no compromising user privacy for profit. Those seem reasonable, Sarah said, though I could see her calculating the implications. Removing Marcus would require board action, shareholder approval, and probably legal battles over his severance and equity. There's one more thing, I added. The FBI is currently investigating Marcus for commissioning cyberattacks against my intellectual property. Quantum Analytics needs to cooperate fully with that investigation and distance itself from his actions. Sarah's face went pale. He hired hackers? Elena slid a folder across the table. Multiple international cybercriminal organizations. Wire fraud, computer fraud, conspiracy charges. Marcus's desperation led him to commit federal crimes that will likely result in prison time. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, scanning the documentation. "The board had no knowledge of this." "We know," I said. "That's why I'm willing to negotiate with you instead of simply licensing ARIA to your competitors. But Marcus has to go. Completely. No consulting agreements, no advisory roles, no involvement whatsoever." The legal advisor was frantically scribbling notes. "Ms. Mitchell, we'll need emergency board meetings, shareholder notifications, SEC filings. This is going to be a complex restructuring." "How quickly can it be done?" Sarah asked. "If the board acts decisively, 72 hours for the essential changes. Full legal restructuring might take weeks, but we can restore ARIA's functionality immediately once the new agreements are signed." Sarah looked around the table at her colleagues, reading the resignation in their expressions. "Dr. Blackwood, assuming we can meet your requirements, when could you resume your position?" "Monday morning. But I want the announcement made today. The market needs to know that quantum analytics is taking corrective action." "And Marcus?" "Marcus made his bed when he chose nepotism over competence and then compounded the error by commissioning federal crimes. He can explain his decisions to the FBI and the unemployment office." Sarah stood and extended her hand. "Dr. Blackwood, you'll have our answer by 5 p.m. today. Thank you for being willing to negotiate rather than simply destroying us." I shook her hand, feeling the weight of the moment. "I'm not interested in destruction, Sarah. I'm interested in building something that works correctly. ARIA has tremendous potential if it's developed by people who understand both the technology and the responsibility that comes with it." As the quantum analytics team filed out, Elena turned to me with a satisfied smile. "That went better than expected. They don't really have a choice. Without ARIA, quantum analytics is just another mid-tier consulting firm with an expensive office lease." "And with Marcus gone?" "With Marcus gone, they might actually become the company I thought I was joining 3 years ago." My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "FBI agents just escorted Marcus out of the building. In handcuffs. The whole lobby saw it. What did you do?" I typed back. "I protected my intellectual property and let Marcus's bad decisions catch up with him. How's the team holding up?" "We're all watching the news. CNN is reporting that quantum analytics stock is stabilizing pending major leadership restructuring." "Did you actually fix this?" "I'm fixing it. Stand by for official announcements." At 4:37 p.m., my phone rang. Sarah Mitchell's voice was tired but determined. "Dr. Blackwood, the board has voted unanimously. Marcus Henley has been removed as CEO and terminated from all positions within the company. We're prepared to accept your licensing terms and offer you the position of Chief Technology Officer with the authority you've requested. When can you start?" "I'll need the weekend to review the formal contracts, but I can restore ARIA's functionality immediately once the paperwork is signed." "Thank God. Our legal team is preparing the documents now. Dr. Blackwood, thank you for giving us a chance to fix this mess. Thank you for choosing competence over loyalty. It's rarer than it should be." After ending the call, I walked to Elena's window and looked out at the city. Somewhere in those glass towers, Marcus Henley was probably sitting in a federal holding cell, contemplating how a single morning's arrogance had cost him his company, his freedom, and his future. Meanwhile, his daughter Victoria was probably live-streaming her confusion to her followers, still not understanding the difference between strategic insights and algorithm development. But the engineers who'd actually built ARIA were about to get the recognition and leadership they deserved. The technology that could revolutionize financial forecasting would continue its development under proper guidance. And everyone involved would understand very clearly who had created what. Elena joined me at the window. "So what happens now?" "Now we rebuild. Better than before. With proper attribution, fair compensation, and leadership that understands the difference between managing talent and owning innovation." "Any regrets about this morning?" I thought about the question seriously. The humiliation of being escorted out by security. The anger of watching Victoria smirk as she claimed credit for work she couldn't understand. The satisfaction of watching Marcus's empire crumble as he realized the scope of his mistake. No, I said finally. Sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to let it collapse completely and rebuild from the foundation up. Even if it means destroying people's lives? I didn't destroy Marcus's life. He did that himself when he chose nepotism over merit and then compounded the error by commissioning federal crimes. I just refused to be collateral damage in his poor decisions. My laptop chimed with an email notification. The formal offer letter from Quantum Analytics, along with new licensing agreements that acknowledged reality and provided fair compensation for innovation. Everything I'd worked for, finally recognized and protected. But more importantly, my phone was buzzing with messages from my team, engineers who'd believed in ARIA's potential, who'd trusted my vision, who deserved to see their work succeed under proper leadership. Tomorrow, I'd walk back into Quantum Analytics as Chief Technology Officer, with authority to build the company Marcus should have created from the beginning. The irony was perfect. By trying to steal credit for my work, he'd ultimately given me control over everything. They fired me at 8:15 a.m. for refusing to compromise my intellectual integrity. By 5 p.m., I owned everything they needed to survive. And that was just the beginning of the story. Monday morning felt like vindication wrapped in expensive coffee and delivered with a side of justice. I arrived at Quantum Analytics at 7:30 a.m., my usual early arrival time, but everything else had changed dramatically since my humiliating exit just 4 days earlier. The lobby buzzed with nervous energy as employees clustered around their phones, reading news coverage of the weekend's corporate restructuring. Quantum Analytics removes CEO, restores founder of revolutionary AI system. Federal investigation uncovers cybercrime conspiracy at tech firm. Data scientist reclaims $2 billion algorithm after wrongful termination. My new security badge granted access to floors I'd never seen before, including the executive level where Marcus had delivered my termination just 96 hours earlier. But I bypassed the corner offices entirely, heading straight for the data science department where my real work waited. Jennifer was already at her workstation, reviewing code architecture diagrams that had been frozen since Friday morning. She looked up as I approached, her expression shifting from concentration to barely contained excitement. "Maya, is it real? Are you actually back?" "I'm back. Better than before." I placed my laptop bag on the desk, my old desk, now officially restored with a nameplate reading Dr. Maya Blackwood, Chief Technology Officer. "The whole team's been waiting. We haven't touched anything since the lockdown started. Kevin tried to access the core systems Friday afternoon, but Layer 17 was still active. Smart decision to leave everything alone." I powered on my laptop, watching as ARIA's administrative interface appeared for the first time in 4 days. "Want to see something beautiful?" The team gathered around as I entered my credentials. The system responded immediately, all 17 security layers recognizing their architect and returning to normal operation. Data flows resumed, processing queues activated, and ARIA's elegant interface came alive with the calculations that had made Quantum Analytics billions. "Welcome back, primary architect. System status: fully operational. Processing backlog: 127 hours. New data integrations available for analysis." The cheers that erupted from my team echoed through the data science department, drawing attention from other floors. Engineers who'd spent the weekend wondering if they'd still have jobs smiled with relief as their monitors displayed familiar code and comfortable error messages. "All right," I said, feeling the satisfaction of a puzzle finally solved correctly. "Let's talk about changes. First, everyone who worked on ARIA development is getting equity stakes in the new licensing structure. Your contributions deserve recognition and compensation." David, my senior architect, raised his hand tentatively. "Maya, what about the research publication? The one Marcus wanted to modify?" "The publication goes forward with accurate authorship. Everyone who contributed gets credited appropriately. Victoria Henley's name appears nowhere in the documentation because she contributed nothing to the research." "What about Marcus? And Victoria?" This from Sarah, the database engineer who'd watched Friday's live stream disaster with horrified fascination. "Marcus is facing federal charges for commissioning cyber attacks against protected intellectual property. Victoria has returned to Northwestern to pursue a real computer science education. Apparently, our conversation Friday helped her understand the difference between strategic insights and actual technical knowledge. I pulled up ARIA's performance metrics on the main display. Despite 4 days of downtime, the system showed no degradation in accuracy or processing capability. If anything, the forced shutdown had allowed background optimization protocols to clean up accumulated inefficiencies. Second change. ARIA's ethical guidelines are now contractually protected. No surveillance applications, no military contracts without defensive purposes, no compromising user privacy for profit. We build tools that empower people, not exploit them. Jennifer nodded approvingly. Good. I was getting uncomfortable with some of the client requests Marcus was approving. Third change. This team has full authority over ARIA's technical development. No more executive interference, no more marketing-driven feature requests that compromise system integrity. We build what the technology needs, not what sounds good in presentation slides. The relief on their faces was palpable. These were engineers who'd watched their carefully crafted code get butchered by management decisions, who'd seen elegant algorithms compromised to meet arbitrary deadlines or impress investors who didn't understand the underlying complexity. Questions? I asked. David raised his hand again. What's our relationship with the board now? Are we still employees, or? You're still quantum analytics employees, but ARIA development operates under special contractual protections. Think of it as a hybrid model. We have independence to build correctly, but we're still part of the larger company. And if the board tries to interfere? They can't. The licensing agreement gives Blackwood Data Solutions, my company, final authority over ARIA's technical development. Quantum analytics provides resources and handles business operations, but they can't override technical decisions. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Marcus just accepted a plea bargain. 5 years federal prison, complete ban from corporate leadership positions, forfeiture of all quantum analytics equity. Thought you'd want to know. I shared the news with my team, watching as the last vestiges of anxiety disappeared from their expressions. Marcus's removal hadn't just been corporate restructuring, it had been complete and permanent exile from the industry where he'd caused so much damage. All right, I said, closing my phone and turning back to the monitors displaying ARIA's restored functionality. We have 4 days of processing backlog to clear, 3 new client implementations to design, and about 6 months of technical debt that accumulated while management was focused on presentations instead of performance. Ready to build something extraordinary. The next 8 hours flew by in a blur of productive chaos. Code reviews, system optimizations, client consultations, and the kind of deep technical work that had been impossible under Marcus's attention deficit leadership style. By the end of the day, ARIA was operating at higher efficiency than ever before, processing financial predictions with the accuracy that had made our reputation. As the team prepared to leave, Jennifer approached my desk with a carefully wrapped package. We got you something, she said, her voice carrying the kind of emotion that comes from shared struggle and mutual respect. For coming back. For fighting for us. For building something worth protecting. Inside the package was a custom coffee mug. World's most protected data scientist, it read, with a small graphic of a computer screen displaying access denied messages. I laughed, really laughed for the first time since Friday morning. This is perfect. Thank you. Maya, Jennifer said seriously, what you did, standing up to Marcus, protecting your work, bringing us all back together, it was incredible. I've never seen anything like it. You would have done the same thing if you'd been in my position. I hope so, but I'm not sure I would have had the courage. As the office emptied and the building settled into evening quiet, I sat at my desk reviewing the day's accomplishments. ARIA was operating flawlessly, my team was secure and motivated, and quantum analytics was finally positioned to become the company it should have been from the beginning. My phone chimed with an email from Sarah Mitchell. Dr. Blackwood, today's stock recovery exceeded our most optimistic projections. Thank you for giving us the chance to fix our mistakes. The board is unanimous in its appreciation for your leadership and vision. I typed back. Thank you for choosing competence over loyalty. Let's build something extraordinary. But the best message came from an unexpected source, a text from Victoria Henley. Dr. Blackwood, I wanted to apologize again for Friday. I started my first real computer science class today. It's harder than I expected, but I'm learning why understanding the fundamentals matters. Maybe someday I'll earn the right to work on projects like ARIA. I considered my response carefully, then typed. The most important part of learning is recognizing what you don't know. Good luck with your studies, Victoria. Real expertise takes time, but it's worth the effort. As I prepare to leave the office, I took one last look at the ARIA interface humming quietly on my monitor. The algorithm that had started as mathematical curiosity in my graduate research had become a revolutionary tool for financial forecasting. The code that Marcus had tried to steal was now protected by contracts and legal structures that ensured its integrity. But more than that, ARIA had become a symbol of something larger, the idea that innovation belongs to innovators, that credit should go to contributors, and that talent deserves recognition regardless of. Hard, she said honestly. Really hard. I'm taking a full course load to catch up on everything I should have learned years ago. Data structures, algorithms, mathematical foundations, all the stuff I thought I could skip because I was good at presentations. That's the foundation everything else builds on. How are you finding it? Humbling. Fascinating. Exhausting. She paused, gathering courage for what came next. I wanted to apologize again for what happened 6 months ago. For claiming credit I hadn't earned, for not understanding what you'd actually built, for being the kind of person who thought family connections mattered more than actual knowledge. Apology accepted, Victoria. The important thing is that you're learning. I am. And I wanted to ask. She hesitated, then plunged ahead. Quantum Analytics has a summer internship program. I know it's probably presumptuous, but I was wondering if you'd consider letting me apply. Not because of who my father was, but because of what I'm learning to do. I studied her carefully, looking for signs of the entitled confidence that had defined our previous interactions. Instead, I saw genuine humility, intellectual curiosity, and the kind of nervous energy that comes from someone who's discovered they love something they previously didn't understand. What have you built? I asked. A predictive model for campus dining hall traffic, she said, pulling out her laptop. It's simple, nothing like ARIA, but it uses real data collection, statistical analysis, and machine learning algorithms I coded myself. The dining services department is actually using it to optimize staffing. I reviewed her code, noting the clean structure, comprehensive documentation, and elegant solutions to complex problems. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was competent, practical, and entirely her own work. This is good work, Victoria. Real work. Thank you. It's the first thing I've ever built that I actually understood completely. Send me your internship application. No promises, but if your academic performance matches the quality of this project, we can discuss opportunities. Her smile was radiant with genuine accomplishment rather than inherited privilege. Thank you, Dr. Blackwood. I won't let you down. As she walked away, I thought about second chances and the difference between earning opportunities and being given them. Victoria had chosen the harder path, acknowledging her ignorance, starting over from fundamentals, building real skills instead of relying on family connections. That kind of intellectual honesty deserved recognition. Elena appeared at my elbow, having watched the entire conversation. Think she's serious about the career change? I think she finally understands the difference between knowing about technology and actually knowing technology. That's a crucial distinction. Any regrets about the whole situation? The confrontation, the legal battles, Marcus's imprisonment. I considered the question while watching the conference crowd stream past, engineers discussing breakthrough algorithms, entrepreneurs pitching revolutionary ideas, investors evaluating the next generation of technological innovation. No regrets, I said finally. Sometimes the only way to protect what matters is to be willing to risk everything for it. ARIA is better now than it ever would have been under Marcus's leadership. My team has the recognition and security they deserve. And the industry learned something important about intellectual property protection. And Marcus. Marcus learned that talent can't be owned, only employed. Unfortunately, He learned it too late to save his freedom. As the conference wound down and attendees headed to evening networking events, I walked through downtown toward my car, reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this moment. 6 months ago, I'd been a fired employee with a cardboard box of belongings and a burning sense of injustice. Today, I was the recognized architect of revolutionary technology, leading a team that was pushing the boundaries of what artificial intelligence could achieve. But more than that, I was part of a growing movement of technical professionals who refused to let their innovations be diminished, stolen, or misattributed. Engineers who documented their contributions, protected their intellectual property, and demanded recognition for their actual achievements. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Saw your presentation online. Amazing as always. The team's excited for tomorrow's development sprint. We've got 3 new optimization algorithms ready for testing. I typed back, looking forward to it. Let's build something extraordinary. Another message, this one from Sarah Mitchell. Maya, the board reviewed Q3 numbers. Revenue up 340%, client satisfaction at all-time highs, 0 ethical violations reported. Thank you for showing us what leadership actually looks like. But the message that made me smile came from my mother. Saw you on the live stream, sweetheart. You looked confident and brilliant up there. Your father would have been so proud. I stopped walking and called her immediately. Mom, how are you feeling? Better than I have in years. The new treatment protocol is working beautifully, and having unlimited access to the best specialists makes all the difference. How does it feel to be famous? I'm not famous. I'm just finally getting credit for my work. That's what fame should be, recognition for actual achievement instead of celebrity for celebrity's sake. Speaking of which, I got a very strange phone call yesterday. Oh, from Marcus Henley's mother. Apparently, she wanted to apologize on behalf of her son and ask if there was any way to work things out regarding his legal situation. I nearly laughed out loud. What did you tell her? I told her that some lessons can only be learned the hard way, and that maybe if she taught her son the difference between earning success and inheriting it, we wouldn't be having this conversation. That's my mom, diplomatic as always. I also told her that her grandson's hair gel budget could probably fund a small startup, and that anyone who spends that much on personal grooming clearly has priorities that don't align with serious business leadership. This time I did laugh, drawing curious looks from passing conference attendees. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. Now get home safely. You have algorithms to optimize tomorrow. As I reached my car, I found a note tucked under the windshield wiper. For a moment, my old paranoia kicked in, memories of Marcus's desperation and his willingness to commission federal crimes to regain control of ARIA. But the handwriting was familiar, and the message was simple. Dr. Blackwood, thank you for showing us what integrity looks like in practice. Your team is lucky to work with someone who fights for what's right. Agent Torres, FBI Cybercrime Division.